So,
Ugne, where are you from?
I'm from Lithuania.
And did you grow up there?
Yes, I did.
And what was it like growing up in Lithuania?
It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of freedom when we were kids, playing outside, meeting our friends most of the time. And it's also very safe, meaning that you can walk to and from school by yourself. I had a very active childhood, so I would rarely be home. I would have a lot of hobbies to fill my after school time. So yeah, it was great.
When did you start learning English?
I think it was first or second grade of primary school, in school.
And when did you feel like you became fluent?
When I became fluent.
In English, yeah.
I don't really know. I think it just comes naturally. The more you speak of the language, the better it gets. I think obviously coming to university in the UK was the first trial, like exam as you call it, to see how well you can manage. But I think from there it was just easier.
So you did your 4-year undergrad in the UK. What prompted you to study abroad?
I just always wanted to get away from my family because that's what teenagers want to do, right? And I was curious to see what it's like to live and work abroad. So therefore when I was in, I think my 10th grade of school out of 12, I decided I wanted to go and study abroad.
And did you get a lot of support in that, or was that normal for people from your town in Lithuania to study outside of the country?
So before I applied, I only knew maybe 1 or 2 people that went to different countries, but not to Scotland specifically, or UK, or the university I wanted to go for. So no, it's not really normal. I come from a very small hometown. People genuinely just move to the capital city. They don't just leave and study abroad or something like that. So it was one of those things you kind of have to figure out as you go.
Yeah, so what was it like culturally living in the UK, studying there for the first time after spending almost your entire life in Lithuania?
It was very cold, but I actually had a lot of fun. University in the UK, and the fact that people in university are from all over the world was a pretty fun experience, and everyone was kind of in the same boat, new to the city, new to university, new to the culture. So it was fun to get to know each other and just have a wild university lifestyle.
What were the cultural differences you noticed between Lithuania and the UK?
A lot of small talk. People they always like have a conversation, and it's a lot of small talk that's nonsensical, but it's kind of must have, especially about the weather. That's not really a thing in the UK. Yeah, like that's not really a thing in Lithuania. People don't really start the conversation by complaining about the weather, but here is just a very easy icebreaker. Generally, people love to queue here, which is also very different to Lithuania. People in Lithuania try to cut the queues, and it's more like nobody kind of cares about it. Here, everything is very well structured in that sense that if you're queuing, you're going to wait your turn and nobody's going to try to undercut you, which was a new thing for me. What else? Obviously, the weather was harsher.
Was harsher in Scotland or in Lithuania?
In Scotland, for sure. It's just, I'm not used to the whole year of being exact same type of weather. Like I'm used to having 4 seasons, like having hot summers and cold winters with snow, whereas in Scotland it's just one constant, well, 2 seasons I'd say, but it's just one constant drizzly weather with a lot of strong wind.
It's funny you say that you noticed a lot more small talk when you came to the UK, because from an American's perspective, the British don't like small talk very much.
Yeah.
Or they're not as initially friendly as we are in America, or you can say it's fake friendly or however you perceive it.
Yeah.
But from an American's perspective, there's a lot less small talk here than in the US. And from your perspective, there was a lot more than from Lithuania.
I think it's because usually in Lithuania, you kind of start asking, well, you meet somebody and then you start asking crucial or core questions straight away, and there's not much small talk just to kind of warm up the waters. People actually are very straight to the point, whereas here people are a little bit more around the corner, around the bush, trying to get to the topic they're interested in, but they don't go as directly because that would be perceived rude or inappropriate, right? So it's a different way of kind of communicating and getting to know people as well. But I actually like it, as now, since I've been here for so long, it's like for me it's natural. Like I feel like since I've been here since 18, I am basically, well, I form my core values and personality in the UK.
You have your you have more cultural similarities now, you feel like, with the UK than with Lithuania. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'd say so, because for me, going back home is a little bit of culture shock. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it is, because I haven't actually had my adult life in Lithuania.
You came to the UK when you were 18 or 19?
Yeah.
And so it's been almost
10 years.
Almost approaching 10 years
Yeah,
now.
10 years almost.
So yeah, most of your adult life, yeah.
Yeah, like most of my independent adult life, because when you're home, you're dependent on your family, go to school, all of that is the same as any other country would probably have, right? You're dependent on your family and where you're from. But I never spent time being grown up in there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And you were born right after the Soviet Union fell?
Not right after.
A couple years, 3-4 years after?
More like 8 years after or something like that.
After. What was it like being a kid in post-Soviet Lithuania?
I don't know what it was before that, so I don't really know what to say. It was normal. It was like a normal childhood. I haven't seen anything else.
What about, I know you've been to the US a couple times recently for the first time as a Lithuanian. What was that like? What did you think about the United States?
I'd say it really depends where you go. For example, New York or more city-like places felt like Europe to me, so it didn't really show off much of a difference. Culturally, reminded me a lot of Hong Kong or London mixed together with a bit more crazy culture. So I'd say it's like very similar in like East Coast. West Coast was, I just didn't realize how big US is. Like, so the fact that it takes 5 hours to fly from one side of the coast to the other,
hours, yeah.
It was mind-blowing, because that's how much it takes for you to get from Portugal to probably Russia or something. And also the fact that you can't really do anything without a car was a shock to me, because I'm used to walking everywhere or like relying on public transportation so much. So I thought that it would be so difficult to be a kid in there and enjoy your life if you can't drive, because I was used to like going everywhere by myself or meeting my friends after school, without worrying of how am I gonna get there, which is a bit different in US. I don't know how people do it, but generally culturally, depends where you go, but people are very friendly. They're curious where you're from, but obviously they have some strong views as well about things in Europe or the way life should be.
Yeah, so you came to the UK before Brexit, right?
After. Right
around when it happened?
Yeah, I came after the election happened, but then it was kind of transitioning to the post-Brexit UK.
Yeah, so there's sort of a narrative right now that generally the UK has been kind of on the downward spiral for the last 10 years. The cost of living is really high in London. Have you noticed that at all as a, more of a foreigner observing another country over the last 8 years? Do you feel like anything's changed, or does it feel like the same UK that was here when you came here 8 years ago? It's
definitely much more expensive, that's for sure. Like, I remember being in university and affording to live off, I don't know, like £500 a month, and that was pretty normal of me paying rent and getting my groceries and having some lifestyle. That would not be possible nowadays, like, for sure, no way. So it's much more expensive, that's true. I think generally people say there's way less immigrants from Europe, but more immigrants from outside of Europe, which I think it is kind of visible. You can notice that's more visible when you walk for
around. Sure,
especially like living in Glasgow, right? When we were students, it was very much just Europeans. Now I saw a lot of Middle Eastern, Chinese people as being the majority of people that come forward and live there.
Because Brexit made it so that Europeans couldn't go to UK schools as affordably, right? The tuition, they all had to pay international tuition costs.
Yeah, I think up until they officially left, people were able to apply for universities and get the same treatment as British students. But I think after they officially left, then it's like international fees. So a lot of Europeans cannot afford to pay like 25 grand a year for university or something like that. So I think it's way less European, more international, coming from all around the world. But Europe, much more expensive. But besides that, I think it's pretty much the same. Obviously, infrastructure hasn't improved because they haven't done anything about it. But I think it has a lot of interesting opportunities in there still, more so than ever.
So someone living abroad now for a while, would you want to live and stay in the UK or the US, or I know the Lithuanian economy has been improving over the last 20 years. Are there a lot of Lithuanian expats that are thinking about returning? Would you return? Or what do you think?
I mean, I never lived full-time in US, lived and worked full-time in US. So I would definitely want to spend some time on the East Coast for sure, living and seeing how I like it. But I'm just so used to living in a big international city now that I think for me it would be a huge change if I have to go back home to my home country, right? To like live with people that are pretty much from the same village. You know, they don't really come from outside of the country as much. So I don't know, I haven't thought about it that properly, but I never had a plan that I want to come back. Unless I'm like really retired, then I can live anywhere, right? But I still think that I want to build my career abroad, which is like either UK or US or in between between two countries.
As a Lithuanian citizen, when the Ukraine war started, what was the reaction of your friends and family in Lithuania? Lithuania is a NATO country, borders Russia.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were very scared because they thought they can be next, and it's very possible because obviously, as you said, they're bordering. Russia and Lithuania have a common border, and it's a very tiny country, so you can actually occupy it very quickly, or bomb it probably too. That's why a lot of people were very scared and started buying real estate abroad in case they need to flee. They will have a place to go. My brother is also at the age where he could potentially be banned from leaving a country in case of a war. So my family was very scared. People generally were scared and kind of like coming up with plan B and C in case of the war or any of that stuff. And I think that was the primary reaction to the whole conflict. But I think now, since it's been for almost 3 years, people kind of got used to it and they wanted to get it over with as soon as possible.
Yeah, so for younger Lithuanians now, would you recommend studying abroad, or do you think both options are fine, or you'd rather, if you were 15 again or 18, would you apply abroad again, or what do you
I would probably apply, and I would apply outside of Europe.
Outside of Europe?
Yeah.
Like in the US, or?
Like probably US or Asia or like Australia, because when I was applying, I was obviously like, I had no money, and my family didn't really have any savings for me to go to university. So getting a good degree from a really good university was out of the question because we would have to take a massive loan, which we were not able to afford, right? So now I would definitely apply for a really good school and go study somewhere in US or Asia, and then take a loan on myself because I know it's affordable to pay it off. And then the job you get after that would be much more worth it, you know.
Why have you switched from saying Europe to studying? Why wouldn't you want to study in Europe anymore, to studying in the US or in Asia?
I think it's because most of the schools, like the best top schools, are in US or in Asia. Like there are some really good schools in UK, but besides that. So
for context, you did a couple semesters abroad at Hong Kong University, correct?
Yeah. So I mean, the quality of education I got in that 1 year of studying University of Hong Kong, which was top 25 university in the world when I was studying, it was really out of the water compared to what I was getting in Scotland. I'm not saying Scottish universities are not good, but I'm just comparing how different it felt to me. So I would definitely say, since you are kind of wasting or sacrificing 3-4 years of your life, you might just actually maximize the value out of it. So I would definitely apply for a much more highly rated school and go for that, because it gives much better opportunities afterwards.
And do you think that a lot of it is about connections in the university, or in the case of Hong Kong, you really felt like the academic curriculum was much more advanced, or really that much better than University of Glasgow?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's both. In the University of Hong Kong, you don't really have as much of the social interactions as you do in the UK. Like, so for example, UK is amazing for making connections. I think US is probably the same. You build out like a huge network of people you know from all over the world, and then the society culture is much more bigger in here and in the US than in Asia. In Asia, everyone is highly dead center focused on getting internships, high quality internships, in like even in between their studies or during their studies. And also the curriculum was like much more strict. They really don't mess with you when it comes to education. That's what I was used to when I was going in high school. And then when I came to UK, it felt like a 3-year holiday when it comes to studying. So I didn't really feel like I'm learning anything new. I was just kind of building my knowledge on top of what I already had, which tells a lot, right?
You really didn't feel like you learned much new in university in the UK?
I mean, I didn't think it was challenging. No. I think it was everything you can potentially learn by yourself. Yeah, it was not that much challenging.
What do you think about people that say that, like, college, that reminds me of people who say that college is a scam or college is a waste of time, essentially, and you don't really learn anything, and people do in the US and in the UK, they take out really large, less
student
in the UK,
loans, yeah.
but especially in the US, people take out large student loans, and then they're almost like an indentured servant for 10
yeah.
to 20 years.
Yeah. I'd say, like, again, depends on the school you go for. If you're going for a top school, at least your school name will will open a lot of doors for you. That's like one thing. And you will obviously meet people that are from similar abilities, right? Because these schools are notoriously difficult to get into for a reason. So I'd say it depends on what you're studying. If you're doing something very STEM related, I think university cannot be a waste of time because you eventually will need to do master's or PhD, whatever, to specialize. When it comes to social sciences or like more like social, less hard degrees, I'd say it could technically be a waste of time depending what you do. But like, it's each to its own.
So what was your path after university? What did you study, and then what did you do after you graduated?
So I studied economics and business management, and then after university I had my own startup had my own startup in the last year of university, and I applied and joined Morgan Stanley as their quant analyst for hedge fund clients, which was very much in line with a couple of courses I did in my degree, but I didn't know much about it before I joined.
And where was that job?
Like, what do you mean?
Where was that job located? So you studied at University of Glasgow, and then you graduated, and then what? And
then I stayed I stayed in Glasgow, and I worked in Morgan Stanley there.
So you worked at Morgan Stanley's office in Glasgow as an analyst after you graduated?
Yeah.
And then what did you do after that?
I decided to quit my job and change my career completely. So
how much was that after 6 months or a year?
So I worked for 3 years and a half, and then the last year and a half I was basically doing 2 jobs. One was working as a quant analyst with hedge fund clients, which were mostly based in US, East Coast. So I was servicing a lot of hedge fund clients there. But also I was working with Inclusive Labs Ventures, which is their in-house early stage accelerator, investing in early stage startups, specifically in EMEA. So I really missed the creativity and the freedom to learn every single day, to kind of upgrade myself. So kind of like that drove me to that team and build my knowledge on that before I eventually decided to transition to VC in London.
And why did you decide to move on from that and try to get into the VC space?
Because I really wanted to obviously work with the latest technology or the latest innovation, the latest like scientific research that was possibly coming to use for day-to-day either businesses or day-to-day users. I really wanted to learn every day and not have any other day to be the same as the last one. So I wanted to have less, I guess, structure in my career as well, because in big corporations, more dynamism, because in big corporations you can clearly see your future 5 years down the line, because you look at your manager and you're like, do I want to be this person? No, I don't, or yes, I do. And then you kind of follow the footstep, because in corporate jobs or in corporate organizations, you don't really have much free way of cutting corners and jumping through the loops when you want to. It's not based on merit, it's based on seniority a lot of the time, and a lot of the time it's very political. So I kind of decided that A, that wasn't for me, maybe not in that team specifically. B, I wanted to learn something new and kind of start from scratch to challenge myself. And therefore I was like, you know what? See, I'm still in my 20s, I might just actually try something new instead of doubting myself, what if 10 years later.
So the VC job, was that in Glasgow as well?
No, I mentioned to you I moved to London.
It was in London? So how did you like London compared to Glasgow?
I love it. I mean, it's a huge energy boost. much nicer weather, much more opportunities.
And where do you want to go in the future? Like, what's your plan?
Ideally, I want to continue my career in VC still, or work within the startup ecosystem. So now I'm starting my new VC placement in Copenhagen, working with Nordic founders all around the world. And from there, essentially, I'll decide whether I want to move to US full time, which so far is my goal, because that's where the industry comes from. That's where you see the most crazy and interesting stuff happening. And you have incredible energy. Like, you don't see that much of energy in VC world or startups as much in Europe, especially outside of London. So my goal is to work in VC in US or work within a startup in US, and then do my MBA, and then be a CEO of a company, and then take over the world.
Okay, CEO Ugne, thank you for the interview.
You're welcome.